Now at 5, Missouri lawmakers take action ahead of a redistricting deadline. A grieving mother seeks to have her deceased son recognized at high school graduation. And the latest on federal efforts to address the nation's shortage of baby formula.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Well, it came down to the wire, but the Missouri legislature has approved new congressional districts just in time for the end of their session. This is KOAM News at 5. The new districts are expected to continue Republicans' edge in upcoming elections. The 22-11 vote by the Senate ended a stalemate that had dominated the legislative session. The bill now goes to Governor Mike Parson to become law. A grieving mother in Erie, Kansas wants change after finding out that her son, who passed away in January, won't be honored at graduation. The Kansas Association of School Boards has a policy for schools to follow, stating that schools do not recognize those who are deceased during graduation ceremonies. She says she doesn't understand the policy and feels it's a slap in the face. The superintendent says it's a policy they've had in place for as long as they've been there.
Braden was a good kid. He had a disease, unfortunately, that really took a toll on him lately. And all he ever wanted to do was graduate. And he's not here to do so.
The policy isn't geared towards anyone in particular. And so it's for everyone, and it's to protect people that have lost somebody, and they don't necessarily want to be reminded of that loss.
Erie High School's graduation will take place tomorrow. Police in Hot Springs, Arkansas are investigating a shooting that happened after a high school graduation ceremony there last night. Witnesses say a large fight broke out and shots were fired. The police department confirms there were injuries, but no deaths. The school district says none of the current students or graduates were involved. Let's check in with Doug Hetty now for a first look at the weather.
Well, it's turned out to be another warm, kind of humid day across the region. A lot of clouds are in the morning hours. We had some scattered showers, even a few thunderstorms, mainly on the Kansas and the Oklahoma side. Now we just have partly cloudy skies, and it looks pretty good through the evening hours. If you have outdoor activities, you're going to be just fine. Any strong to severe thunderstorms out across central Missouri. And then we're also going to have to watch for some additional ones developing out toward the west, but those wouldn't affect us until after 9 or 10 p.m. All right, mid-80s right now through the evening hours. We slip back into the 70s, and then you can see some thunderstorms trying to pop up late this evening. Overnight lows down into the middle 60s. Another severe threat on Sunday. A lot to break down here in just a bit.
See you then. On Capitol Hill, the House Select Committee investigating the deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol has now subpoenaed House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and 4 other Republican lawmakers. The panel wants to speak to them about the events surrounding the January 6th insurrection as the committee gets ready to present its findings to the American public, perhaps as early as next month. Scott McFarland has that story.
A crime and attack unlike any in American history has led to a congressional investigation unlike any other. Now, after nearly 1,000 interviews, the January 6th Select Committee has its sights on 5 Republican congressmen, each of whom has refused to appear voluntarily, including the GOP leader in the House, Kevin McCarthy. The committee knows McCarthy spoke with then-President Trump before, during, and after the attack, something he talked about during an interview with CBS News on January 6th.
I've spoken to the president. I asked him to talk to the nation to tell him to stop this.
McCarthy says the current investigation is not legitimate, and the committee acknowledges these subpoenas mark an unprecedented moment.
An attempted coup and a violent insurrection at the Capitol interrupting the peaceful transfer of power are unprecedented events.
As for the other members called, Alabama's Mo Brooks gave a fiery speech before Trump at the White House Ellipse January 6th.
Today is the day American patriots start taking down names and kicking ass.
The committee says Ohio's Jim Jordan talked to Trump on the 6th and texted White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows earlier about blocking the electoral count, and that Congressman Andy Biggs and Scott Perry were both involved in discussions related to efforts to overturn the 2020 election.
This is all about distracting America from their abysmal record of running America into the ground.
The 5 congressmen have criticized this subpoena and called the committee polarized, with 7 Democrats and 2 Republicans. The committee hasn't indicated what happens if these congressmen defy the subpoena, whether they'll be referred for contempt of Congress prosecution. But the committee has its first hearing set for June 9th, with a final report likely weeks later. Scott McFarland, CBS News, the Capitol.
There are new allegations of possible war crimes by Russian forces in Ukraine. Officials say an attack on 2 schools in the northern part of Ukraine killed 3 people and wounded 12. The Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, responded by saying, quote, "All Russian commanders who gave such orders are simply sick and incurable." Today, Ukrainian authorities began the first war crimes trial of the conflict. A Russian soldier stands accused of killing a Ukrainian civilian in the early days of the war. Israeli police moved in on a crowd of mourners at the funeral of Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, beating demonstrators with batons and causing pallbearers to nearly drop the casket. Witnesses say the journalist was shot and killed by Israeli forces in the occupied West Bank earlier this week. She had covered the Middle East for more than 2 decades. Her death has brought a wave of grief in the Arab world. Police accuse the crowd of incitement and violence. Next, adjusting testing to changes in the pandemic.
In this lab, they're testing wastewater for the COVID virus. I'm Michael George with how more cities are using this technology to get an early warning about the next COVID surge.
And new research concerning opioids and pregnancy. Those stories just ahead in Health Watch. We know you depend on us for news and info. Topping today's Health Watch, with more Americans now testing for COVID-19 at home, it's becoming more difficult to monitor infection rates. That's why wastewater sampling is more valuable than ever, using sewage to track the pandemic. Michael George reports.
These water samples come from sewer lines. What we flush down the drain could hold clues to the next surge of COVID-19.
It can be a sort of sentinel for what's coming up next.
The team here at the Columbia University Medical Center is studying how wastewater can detect new outbreaks, testing sewage from the hospital, research buildings, and nearby college dormitories. Because people with COVID-19 can shed the virus through their waste, the samples reveal infection trends within a community.
Anyone who has contributed to that wastewater is sort of tested at the same time. So it's like collecting one big pool of samples from a big population.
Just by analyzing the wastewater here, they can even detect what variants are emerging. These tests can function as a sort of early warning system. From California to Wisconsin to Florida, hundreds of communities are using the technique with full support from the CDC.
It's important for communities and health officials to use these measures to help inform prevention strategies for their local area.
Researcher Maidni Anavajala says the sampling can monitor for surges, even when the nation is ready to move on.
As testing of individual people ramps down, as the pandemic sort of comes to a different phase, we don't have the infrastructure anymore to test everyone, so wastewater is a great cost-effective way to do that at scale.
A canary in the coal mine to predict future dangers the pandemic may still have in store. Michael George, CBS News, New York.
More than 400 testing sites across the country are enrolled in a CDC wastewater program that allows states to compare their sewage data. Scientists in California say there are significant benefits to treating opioid use disorder during pregnancy. In an examination of fetal brain scans, they found medication helped minimize opioid-related brain abnormalities in newborns. New research out of the University of Michigan finds lean people with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease are more likely to have heart disease than those who are overweight. The liver condition is more common in overweight people, and researchers say doctors may be overlooking lean patients who could have a higher cardiovascular risk. And a new survey finds more than 7 million Europeans are estimated to have skin cancer, despite it being the most preventable form of the disease. Leading dermatologists in Europe say more education is needed to help people make safer skin choices, including the use of sun protection to block ultraviolet rays. And that is a look at today's health news. Later, efforts to deal with a shortage.
A nationwide shortage of baby formula is sending parents scrambling to find it on empty shelves across the country. I'm Christina Ruffini at the White House. We'll tell you what the president and lawmakers are trying to do to help.
Plus, we're going to be dodging some thunderstorms over the weekend. We're going to look at that coming up.
Cox Health virtual visits in.
Well, it turned out to be a pretty good Friday. A lot of clouds through the first half of the day. We had some leftover thunderstorms, and we did get some scattered thunderstorms on the Kansas and the Oklahoma side. These weren't too strong or severe. And then some sunshine's been breaking out throughout the afternoon. Nice shot. Indigo Sky Casino and Resort parking lot starting to fill up. It's Friday evening out across the region. It looks pretty good. We got those thin mid and upper level clouds streaming through. Temperatures are warm. If you want to get outside this evening, do some outdoor activities, it looks fine. We're sitting low to mid 80s across the board. Winds kind of all over the place just due to that little band of showers and thunderstorms that worked in earlier. Now they're kind of cranking out of the southeast, fairly light at about 5 to 10. 7th in the range line sitting at 86. Feels like 87, so at least the humidity is not terrible, but we got a little bit of humidity out there. We are watching for some scattered thunderstorms later on tonight, so a very low severe threat, mainly in our western counties, and this is going to be after 9 or 10 p.m. Even though I do think most of us at least have a shot that we could get some pop-up thunderstorms later on tonight. But if you're doing anything this evening, it looks fine. For the next 3, 4, 5 hours, thunderstorm chances will increase mainly after 9 or 10 o'clock for us tonight. And this is mainly on the Kansas and the Oklahoma side, not for the bulk of the region. All right, you can see the leftover clouds from scattered showers and thunderstorms earlier. We have some thunderstorms which have popped up out across central Missouri, and then we are also watching for a few trying to get going to the south of Wichita. And those are going to be the ones that we'll keep our eyes on to see if those can flare up and try to get into our western counties a little bit later on tonight. Also a little batch to the southeast of Oklahoma City. All right, let's go through time. Let's kind of break this down for you. Just a lot of clouds throughout the evening hours. You can see those isolated storms out to our west. After about 9, 10, 11 o'clock, we'll try to get a few scattered thunderstorms in here. These could be a little bit strong. They're going to be very hit and miss. We may only get 1 or 2 even into the viewing area, but the ones that do pop up could produce some heavy amounts of rain. So just some scattered thunderstorms. You can see this model's trying to prog one that drops down through Delaware County. These are just going to be hit and miss for us tonight. These are going to be gone by morning. And then as we go into tomorrow afternoon, it looks pretty good. Temperatures very similar to what we have seen today. 64 to start, 79 by noon. High temp right around 84 as we go into the afternoon hours. Now, by the time we head into late tomorrow night, I think this thing locked up on me. But as we head into tomorrow evening and tomorrow night, our chances for showers and thunderstorms will start to increase again. Let's see if I can get this thing working. No, it just fully locked up. But we're going to get some scattered thunderstorms in here again late tomorrow night into Sunday morning. Sunday looks pretty good, 85, but then we're going to have to watch the afternoon because we are going to get a severe threat which works in mainly after 2 p.m. and those could be some pretty big storms. So we need to keep our eyes, especially on Sunday afternoon. I guess I'll restart this guy and see. I guess it didn't like tomorrow's forecast because that's where it's stuck.
Or like a lot of us, the system sometimes overheats.
That's true.
Guess. Thanks, Doug. You can see some natural wonders and get in touch with the area's mining history at the 15th Annual Rock and Gem Show, now underway at the Joplin Museum. It began today and it continues through the weekend. Admission is free.
If you are introduced to the rock hobby and you like it, you can get hooked. It can be very addictive. And it's a wonderful hobby, and God placed thousands of different kinds of gemstones and crystal forms on the planet, mostly just for our enjoyment.
The Tri-State Mining District yielded millions of tons of rock. The mines became famous for some amazing crystals, and collectors came to the Joplin area for many years to find or buy them. Here's a look at our tower camera, sponsored by R.E. Smith Construction. As work continues on the KOAM More Power project, you can check it out anytime on our website. That's KOAMnewsnow.com/power. Coming up, federal efforts to address the baby formula shortage. First, though, we honor a local World War II veteran. Richard Withrow served in the U.S. Army and Navy between 1942 and 1945. The Nevada, Missouri native served aboard the naval ship Tripoli in the South Pacific. Richard Withrow, a four-state hero.
Doug Hetty has earned the NWA seal of approval and
Topping today's Consumer Watch, the baby formula shortage continues to expand as desperate parents of infants and young children find limited supply and empty shelves in stores across the U.S. The Biden administration and federal lawmakers are launching plans to address this shortage, but families worry help may not come soon enough. Christina Ruffini has more from the White House.
To daddy. Throw it to daddy.
For new parents Gustavo and Kelly Arias, finding formula for their 10-month-old daughter is overwhelming.
It's like a scavenger hunt every week. Get the ball.
The couple from Long Island in New York have asked relatives as far away as Texas for help, but they've also come up empty-handed.
This is our last can, and this is about what we have left.
The shortage started in part after a February recall and subsequent shutdown of an Abbott plant in Michigan over concerns about tainted formula. This week, President Biden made a personal appeal to formula manufacturers and retailers, asking them to increase supply. But Republican critics say he was slow to act.
We moved as quickly as the problem became apparent to us. We have to move with caution as well as speed, because we got to make sure what we're getting is, in fact, first-rate product.
The FDA says it will announce a plan next week to increase imports of baby formula as well as relaxing regulations for manufacturers, something it says will dramatically increase supply in the coming weeks. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says lawmakers will vote on an emergency measure next week, hoping to relax federal rules regarding the special supplemental nutritional program for women, infants, and children, known as WIC. The White House has called on states to do the same. But all these actions won't bring relief soon enough to struggling parents.
It's very stressful as a parent, that now you have to worry about feeding your baby, you know what I mean? Gas is going up. It's just another icing in the cake.
Some Republicans have called on the president to invoke the Defense Production Act to address the shortage. The White House says that's on the table. Christina Ruffini, CBS News, the White House.
The Biden administration has also called on states to crack down on baby formula price gouging. Meanwhile, multiple congressional committees have launched investigations into the issue, with public hearings expected to begin on Capitol Hill next week. The Amber Sky Salon, which serves as a milk bank in Shrewsbury, Missouri, is getting so many donations, it's had to put them on pause. Missouri is one of several states showing a 50% out-of-stock rate for baby formula. Human breast milk is being made available as needed on an emergency basis. Mothers with infants under 6 months of age are encouraged to talk to their pediatricians about alternatives. It's been a rough week for cryptocurrency investors. Yesterday, the price of Bitcoin dropped below $26,000. That hadn't happened since December of 2020. A year ago, Bitcoin was trading for just under $50,000 apiece. Mercedes-Benz is recalling nearly 300,000 SUVs to fix a problem that could lead to a brake failure. The recall affects ML, GL, and R-Class vehicles from the 2006 through 2012 model years. Owners are urged to immediately stop driving those SUVs until their braking systems can be inspected. A final check of the forecast next. Up next on the CBS Evening News, on the road with a love story for the ages. Then on KOAM News at 6, a look at how the new sports gambling law could impact Kansas. Plus, the donations from a Galena woman with a terminal illness helping others struggling with disease. And Bronte Zaratsky explores the school policy about honoring deceased students at graduation. Stay with us for the CBS Evening News and then KOAM News at 6. Still warm out there, and you wouldn't think that we would be hoping for rain after the torrential rains that we saw earlier this month, but now it's kind of getting to the point where we could use some more.
Yeah, we could use a little bit of rain. We just don't want a lot of rain or we'll get into a flooding situation again. But we are going to watch for some scattered thunderstorms mainly after 9 or 10 p.m. tonight. And these will mainly be on the Kansas and the Oklahoma side. Tomorrow looks good. We do have a decent severe threat by Sunday afternoon, so we'll keep our eyes on that.
Thanks for joining us. The CBS Evening News is next. And of course, we're going to be right back here for KOAM News at 6. See you then. Let's make it a great evening.